3 days ago, something impossible happened to you. You dismissed it, called it coincidence, déjà vu, a trick of memory. But it wasn't. It was evidence that you're not in the same timeline you were in last week. And the fact that you ignored it, that you rationalized it away, that you convinced yourself it was nothing, that's exactly what keeps most people blind to the most important truth about reality. It's not fixed. It's not solid. And you're not stuck in one version of it. Let me describe what happened and you tell me if this feels familiar. You were looking for something. Keys, your phone, a document you needed, and you knew exactly where you left it. Not a vague sense of where it might be. Absolute certainty. You could picture yourself putting it there. You could remember the moment. The location was crystal clear in your mind. And when you went to get it, it wasn't there. You searched. You retraced your steps. You checked the logical places. Nothing. And then, hours later, maybe the next day, you found it. In a completely different location. A place that made no sense. A place you never would have put it. And here's the part that made your stomach turn slightly. You live alone, or nobody else was home, or everyone swears they didn't touch it. The object moved. And there's no rational explanation for how. Most people experience this and immediately start gaslighting themselves. I must have been distracted. I probably put it there and forgot. My memory is getting bad. But your memory isn't bad. Your memory is accurate. For the timeline you were in when you put that object down. The problem is, that timeline isn't the one you're in now. Reality shifted underneath you, and the only evidence left behind was the displacement of a physical object that existed in position X in the previous configuration, and position Y in this one. Or maybe it wasn't an object. Maybe it was a conversation. You referenced something you discussed with someone, specific details. You remember where you were standing, what they said, how they reacted. The whole interaction is vivid in your memory, and they look at you like you're insane. They have zero recollection. They're not pretending to forget, they're not gaslighting you. They genuinely have no memory of a conversation that, for you, absolutely happened. Because in this timeline, in this version of reality, that conversation never occurred. But in the timeline you shifted from, it did. And you brought the memory with you, like luggage from a trip nobody else took. This is what I mean by the glitch. Not a technology glitch, a reality glitch. A seam showing between two versions of the world that weren't supposed to be visible to you, but they are visible. You've seen them. Multiple times. You've just been trained your entire life to ignore them. Explain them away, pretend they don't mean what they obviously mean. Here's what nobody tells you about quantum physics, about the many worlds interpretation that's been scientifically validated for decades. It's not theoretical. It's not a thought experiment. It's not something that only matters in laboratories. You are living it right now. Every moment of your life, every decision you make, every shift in your awareness creates a branching point. Reality splits. One version of you continues down path A. Another version continues down path B. And your consciousness, the observer, collapses into one of those paths based on the frequency you're vibrating at in that moment. But here's the part they don't teach you in school. Those other paths don't just disappear. They exist. Parallel. Simultaneous. And under certain conditions, when your frequency shifts dramatically enough, when something in your consciousness reorganizes, you don't just influence which path you go down next. You can jump from one existing path to another. You can shift timelines. And when that happens, reality rearranges itself around you. Most of it stays the same because most timelines are nearly identical. But small things are different. Details are off. Objects are displaced. Memories don't match. And you get a glitch. The Mandela effect isn't mass delusion. It's mass timeline convergence. It's groups of people who are in slightly different versions of reality, all shifting into the same one, and noticing that their memories don't align with this version's history. Some people remember it one way. Some remember it another. They're both right. They're just remembering different timelines that were real until they collapsed into this one. And you personally have shifted timelines more times than you can count. But because your brain is designed to create a continuous narrative, Because memory consolidation smooths over inconsistencies to protect your sanity, because you've been conditioned to trust consensus reality over your own perception, you miss it. You experience the glitch, feel the wrongness, notice the displacement, and then you let it go. You move on. You forget. But the glitches don't stop happening just because you stopped noticing them. They're happening constantly. Reality is reorganizing around you all the time. The only question is whether you're conscious enough to see it, whether you're paying attention, whether you trust your own perception more than you trust the comforting lie that everything is stable and solid and unchanging. The glitch isn't a bug in the matrix. It's a receipt. It's proof that you shifted, that reality bent, that the universe responded to a change in your frequency by collapsing you into a slightly different configuration of possibilities. And if you've been experiencing these glitches more frequently recently, if objects are moving, if conversations are disappearing, if reality feels slightly off in ways you can't quite articulate, that's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that your frequency is changing rapidly, that you're shifting more, that you're becoming unstable in your current timeline, which means you're about to lock into a new one. And the fact that you're watching this video right now, that something drew you here, that this title caught your attention in a way that made you click, that's not random either. You're here because you're in the timeline where this information reaches you, where you're ready to hear it, where the glitches you've been experiencing finally get acknowledged and explained. In another timeline, another version of you scrolled past this, didn't click, stayed asleep, but you didn't. You're here, and that choice, that tiny quantum decision, just created another branch point, another split, another timeline where you know versus a timeline where you don't. The glitch already happened. You already shifted. You just didn't know what you were looking at. But now you do. And once you know, once you start seeing the glitches for what they are, you can't unsee them. Reality stops being solid. It starts being fluid. And that's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Because if reality can shift without you trying, what happens when you learn to shift it on purpose? Let me explain how this actually works at the quantum level, because understanding the mechanism is what allows you to stop being a passive participant and start being a conscious creator. And I'm going to keep this simple because the physicists overcomplicate it on purpose. The truth is elegant. The truth is accessible. You don't need a PhD to understand how reality operates. You just need to stop accepting the watered-down version they taught you in high school. Quantum mechanics proved something revolutionary in the early 1900s that most people still don't fully grasp. Particles don't exist in one specific state until they're observed. Before observation, they exist in what's called superposition. Multiple states simultaneously, all possibilities at once. And the act of observation, the act of a conscious observer interacting with the system, is what collapses that superposition into one definite state. The observer doesn't just passively witness reality. The observer creates reality by choosing, consciously or unconsciously, which possibility becomes actual. Now scale that up from particles to your entire life. You, as a conscious observer, are constantly collapsing possibilities into actualities through the frequency you're broadcasting. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold, creates a specific electromagnetic signature. That signature interacts with the quantum field, and the field responds by collapsing the possibilities that match your signature and filtering out the ones that don't. This is where the many worlds interpretation comes in. Physicist Hugh Everett proposed, and subsequent evidence has supported, that all possible outcomes of every quantum event actually occur. Not theoretically. Actually. When you make a decision, when a quantum wave function collapses, reality branches. One version of you experiences outcome A. Another version experiences outcome B. Both are real. Both exist. Both are you, living in parallel timelines that are equally valid, equally physical, equally actual. And here's the part that changes everything. Your consciousness is not confined to one branch. Your consciousness is the constant. It's the through line. It's the only thing that remains coherent across all possible versions of reality. And when your frequency shifts dramatically, when something in your core vibration changes, your consciousness can jump from one branch to another. Not metaphorically. Actually jump. You collapse out of timeline A and into timeline B. And because the timelines are nearly identical, same planet, same general history, same people, you don't notice the shift consciously. But your subconscious notices. Your body notices. And the glitches are the evidence. Think of it like this. Imagine reality as a film strip. Each frame is a timeline, a complete version of the world frozen in one specific configuration. And your consciousness is the projector light, illuminating one frame at a time, creating the illusion of continuous movement, continuous narrative, continuous self. But if the film strip shifts, if the projector jumps even slightly, you're suddenly illuminating a different frame. A frame that's almost identical to the previous one, but not quite. Most of the image is the same, but a few details are different. A shadow in a different position, an object in a different place. A conversation that happened in frame 1 but didn't happen in frame 2. That's a timeline shift. That's what you experienced when the object moved. When the conversation disappeared. When the memory didn't match. You didn't imagine it. You didn't misremember. You accurately remember timeline 1, but you're currently experiencing timeline 2. And the glitch is the friction between your memory of where you were and the reality of where you are. Now, most people shift timelines constantly without realizing it because most shifts are tiny, microscopic differences that don't create noticeable glitches. You make a small decision, your frequency adjusts slightly, and you collapse into a nearly identical timeline where that decision played out slightly differently. No big deal, no evidence, no conscious awareness of the shift. You just continue experiencing what feels like one continuous reality. But sometimes the shifts are bigger. Sometimes something happens that changes your frequency dramatically. A major decision, a trauma, a sudden awakening of consciousness, a choice that fundamentally alters who you are at the energetic level. And when that happens, the timeline shift is significant enough that the differences become noticeable. Objects are displaced, memories don't align, people remember things differently, the glitches become visible. And here's what's fascinating. You can feel when a shift is coming. Right before a major timeline shift, there's a sensation, a wrongness, a feeling that reality is slightly unstable, slightly dreamlike, slightly unreal. Time feels weird. Synchronicities increase. You keep seeing the same numbers, the same symbols, the same signs repeating in ways that feel too consistent to be coincidence. That's not the universe sending you messages. That's you oscillating between timelines. You're not fully locked into the new one yet. You're vibrating at a frequency that's between two branches and reality is flickering. The synchronicities are overlap. Bleed through from multiple timelines resonating with your current state. Most people experience this instability and panic. They try to ground themselves, get back to normal, return to the familiar. And often they succeed. They lower their frequency back to the old baseline, and they collapse back into the original timeline. The shift aborts, and they continue living the same life they were living, convinced that the weirdness was just stress or lack of sleep or too much coffee. But some people don't abort. Some people feel the instability and lean into it. They trust the wrongness. They allow the shift. They stay at the new frequency even though it's uncomfortable, even though reality feels strange, even though they can't explain what's happening. And those people complete the shift. They lock into the new timeline. And when they do, everything rearranges. Not all at once, not dramatically, but progressively, unmistakably, life becomes different. Better or worse depends on the frequency they shifted to, but different. Always. This is why manifestation works for some people and not others. The people who successfully manifest aren't doing something magical. They're shifting timelines. They're changing their frequency to match a version of reality where the thing they want already exists. And then they're sustaining that frequency long enough to fully collapse into that timeline. The thing doesn't appear out of nowhere. It was always there, in that parallel branch. They just weren't in that branch until they shifted their frequency to access it. And this is why your old self fights back right before a major shift. Because your old self, your old identity, Your old frequency, that's what kept you locked into the timeline you're trying to leave. And as you start to shift as your frequency changes, that old identity recognizes that it's about to cease being your dominant reality, and it will do everything it can to pull you back, to make you doubt, to make you scared, to make you retreat to the familiar, because if you complete the shift, the old you doesn't exist anymore. Not gone, just not primary. Not the version of you that's driving anymore. The glitches are proof that the shift is real, that reality is responding to your frequency, that you're not imagining this. And the more you notice the glitches, the more conscious you become of the shifting process, the more control you have over where you shift to. You stop being randomly bounced between timelines by unconscious reactions and start deliberately navigating toward the reality you actually want to live in. You've already shifted. Multiple times. The glitches proved it. Now the question is, are you going to keep shifting unconsciously, at the mercy of whatever frequency your unexamined thoughts and emotions happen to generate? Or are you going to start shifting on purpose? So if you've been shifting timelines your entire life, if these glitches are happening constantly, why didn't you notice? Why does it take someone explaining it for you to even recognize the pattern? Because your brain is actively working against your awareness. Not maliciously, protectively. Your brain's primary job isn't to show you truth. It's to keep you functional. And the truth that reality is fluid, that you're constantly jumping between parallel versions of existence, that nothing is actually stable or solid or permanent, that truth is existentially terrifying, so your brain hides it from you. This is called continuity of consciousness. Your brain takes the fragmented, non-linear, constantly shifting nature of quantum reality and smooths it into a coherent narrative. It fills in gaps. It adjusts memories. It creates the illusion that you're experiencing one continuous timeline flowing from past through present into future. But that's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is that you're collapsing possibilities moment by moment, and sometimes those collapses pull you into configurations that are slightly different from the previous moment. But your brain stitches it all together into one seamless story, so you don't have to confront the existential horror of living in a reality that's constantly reorganizing around you. Think about how memory works. You don't store memories like files on a hard drive, perfectly preserved and unchanged. Every time you recall a memory, you're reconstructing it. Your brain pulls fragments from different areas, assembles them into a coherent narrative, and that process of reconstruction alters the memory slightly. And here's the critical part. When you shift timelines, when you move from configuration A to configuration B, your brain immediately begins adjusting your memories to fit the new configuration. It rewrites inconsistencies. It smooths over contradictions. It makes the past align with the present so that your sense of continuous self remains intact. This is why the glitches fade so quickly. You experience the object displacement. You feel the wrongness. You notice that your keys are in a place that makes no sense. And for a moment, you're confronted with evidence that reality shifted. But then your brain kicks in. It generates a plausible explanation. I must have been distracted. Maybe someone moved them. I probably put them there and forgot. And within minutes, sometimes seconds, you've accepted the explanation. The glitch is dismissed. The evidence is rationalized away. And the shift disappears from your conscious awareness. Your brain is protecting you. Because if you remained constantly aware that reality is shifting around you, that the world is not solid, that your memories might not match the timeline you're currently in, you'd struggle to function. You'd question everything. You'd lose the ability to make decisions based on past experience because you couldn't trust that your past experiences actually occurred in this version of reality. You'd be paralyzed by uncertainty. So your brain gives you the gift of false continuity. It lets you believe that reality is stable so you can navigate it without constant existential crisis. But there's a cost to this protection. And the cost is that you live most of your life on autopilot, unconscious of the fact that you're constantly collapsing new realities into existence. You don't realize that your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs are actively shaping which timeline you're experiencing. You don't recognize that you have agency in this process. You think reality is something that happens to you, something external and fixed that you have to adapt to. When the truth is, Reality is something you're creating moment by moment through the frequency you're broadcasting. And you can't consciously create if you're not even aware that creation is happening. This is why awakening is so disorienting. When you start to wake up, when your consciousness begins to expand, one of the first things that happens is that the brain's protective smoothing mechanism starts to fail. You begin to notice the glitches. You begin to see the inconsistencies. You begin to recognize that your memories don't always match consensus reality. And instead of immediately dismissing these observations, you hold them. You question them. You let them be strange. And that act of holding the strangeness, of not immediately rationalizing it away, that's what allows you to see the pattern. To recognize that the glitches aren't random. They're evidence. Evidence of something profound happening beneath the surface of your everyday experience. And once you start seeing the glitches, once you become conscious of timeline shifts, you can't unsee them. The protective mechanism is broken. Your brain can't smooth over the inconsistencies anymore because you're actively looking for them. You're paying attention. You're noticing when objects move, when memories don't align, when reality feels slightly off. And the more you notice, the more you see. Not because the shifts are increasing, because your awareness is increasing. You're becoming conscious of something that was always happening, but that you were previously blind to. This is the difference between living unconsciously and living consciously. Unconscious living is letting your brain create the illusion of continuity, accepting consensus reality as fixed truth, moving through life as a passive observer of circumstances that seem to happen to you. Conscious living is recognizing that the continuity is an illusion, that consensus reality is just the most common collapse probability, and that you're not a passive observer, but an active participant in determining which possibilities collapse into your experience. And here's what changes when you become conscious of the shifting. You stop being afraid of it. The first few times you notice a glitch after becoming aware, it's unsettling. Reality feeling unstable is uncomfortable when you've spent your whole life believing it's solid. But as you continue to notice, as you continue to see evidence that you're shifting between timelines, something shifts in you. You start to understand that the instability isn't dangerous, it's opportunity. Because if reality can shift without you trying, that means reality is responsive, malleable, influenced by your state of being. And if you can become conscious of what causes the shifts, you can start directing them. You can start choosing which timeline you collapse into, instead of being randomly bounced between configurations based on unconscious reactions to external circumstances. The reason you didn't notice the shifts before is because you weren't supposed to. Your brain was doing its job, keeping you functional by maintaining the illusion of stability. But now you know. Now you've seen behind the curtain, and you can't go back to unconscious living. You can try. You can attempt to dismiss the glitches again, to rationalize them away, to pretend that reality is solid and fixed, and that you're just experiencing normal memory glitches. But it won't work. Because the knowing is there now. The awareness is there. And once you're aware that you're shifting timelines, the only question left is, are you going to shift consciously or unconsciously? Are you going to be the passive passenger, or are you going to take the wheel? If you've experienced any of these glitches, write the word shifted in the comments. You're becoming conscious of reality's true nature. And that consciousness is the first step toward working with reality instead of being at its mercy. When people talk about manifesting something, when they visualize a desire and try to bring it into reality, what they're actually doing, whether they know it or not, is attempting to shift timelines. The thing they want doesn't need to be created from nothing. It already exists, in a parallel timeline, in a different configuration of reality. And manifestation isn't about forcing that thing to appear in your current timeline. It's about shifting yourself into the timeline where that thing already exists. This is why manifestation fails for most people. They try to manifest from their current frequency. They want the new thing, but they're still being the old person. And the old person exists in a timeline where the thing they want isn't present. So they visualize, they affirm, they vision board, and nothing happens. Because they're trying to pull something from a different timeline into this one, instead of shifting themselves into the timeline where it's already waiting. The people who successfully manifest understand this, even if they don't use these words. They don't just visualize having the thing. They become the person who has the thing. They shift their identity. They change their frequency. They start thinking, feeling, and acting as if the desired reality is already true. And when they sustain that frequency long enough, they shift timelines. They collapse into the branch where the thing they wanted is already present. And from the outside, it looks like magic, like the universe delivered. But from the inside, from the quantum perspective, they just navigated to a different configuration of reality. And this is why glitches often increase during active manifestation work. When you're deliberately trying to shift your frequency, when you're doing the inner work to become someone different, you're destabilizing your current timeline. You're making yourself incompatible with the branch you're in. And as you oscillate between the old timeline and the new one, as your frequency wavers between the old you and the new you, reality flickers. Objects move. Memories conflict. Synchronicities spike. You're between timelines. Not fully in the old one anymore. Not fully locked into the new one yet. And the glitches are evidence that the shift is in progress. So if you're experiencing